Beacon. Gosh, I feel kind of bad because the buzz that's going on in this room with all this conversation, I feel kind of selfish making you pay attention to me, but I'm here. So, good morning and welcome to Beacon Unitarian Universalist Congregation and Summit. We are a community committed to the inseparable and deeply shared values of interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity, all centered around love. If you're joining us online this morning, please take a moment to say hello in the chat. My name is Jermaine Kripe. My pronouns are she and her, and I have the privilege of serving as your lifespan coordinator. I am a plus-size African-American woman battling the gray with blue and black hair dye and wearing my fancy pants today and blue glasses. We love the fancy pants. They have pockets. I have a few announcements this morning. Misa, would you hold up the lovely sign of what's happening this afternoon is Afternoon Music with Mark Miller. If you haven't purchased your tickets, don't miss out. Come and visit Jean Crichton or talk to Misa during social hour and purchase your tickets for this wonderful afternoon of music. But before our afternoon music happens, if you have a moment to throw on a costume or not, decorate a car or not, to visit our 695 location where we'll be hosting our annual trunk or treat for the community's children in celebration of Halloween, which is becoming more festive than Christmas nowadays. Our third announcement is this coming Saturday is our annual fundraiser, Harvest Delight. And if you haven't purchased your tickets already, or if you haven't contributed something, if you want to give to support the work of this community, please see myself or Missy Rogers either in the lobby or in Fellowship Hall during Beacon Cafe, where we will have iPads to help you register. Sound good? All right. This morning, I would love to share this poem by one of my favorite writers, thinkers named Jaya Jean. It's called Proverb. A precious child asks grandmother, "What does it mean to reweave your life?" Grandmother answered, "Unlearn your old harmful ways. Learn your new healing ways. Garden the stories you tell yourself. Allow beauty to run like a river through your soul again. Permit peace to graze your heart. Drink in the sun." I love that one. Savor the rain. Love like love loves. Welcome to Beacon, this community that loves like love loves. Let us worship together. And as we start our worship this morning, we light our chalice, the symbol of our faith that is being lit by congregations around the globe in celebration of our united community together. And our chalice words will be sung today. Misa?
Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Good morning, my name is Misa Iwama. I'm the Director of Music Ministry, and I'm so happy to be here today with John O'Neill and with the Beacon Choir. And we are going to start this morning by singing Joy in the Morning. Now, you should have a handout which has the words on it. If you don't have a handout and you're next to someone in the choir, I'm sure that they can help you with the words since they have the music as well. And I invite you to rise and body your spirit as we sing this song together.
This morning's Time for All Ages is about compassion. Not just the kind that shows up when someone is sad or hurt, but the kind that is a part of how we move in the world every day. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe that compassion is something we can practice and grow, like a seed that we water in our hearts. Sometimes compassion means helping in a small way, like offering a kind word or a smile. Our story today is about another kind of compassion, this kind that happens when we view a big injustice that is hurting people and say to ourselves, that's not right. I need to do something about it. One of the coolest things about this story is it's about a real person, a Unitarian Universalist who made a big difference in the world by treating people with compassion and dignity, even when the rest of the world did not. So close your eyes and imagine the world 200 years ago, before there were cell phones or cars or even electricity in most homes. There was our UU ancestor. Her name was Dorothea Dix. And even though her world looked very different from ours, she had something very important and in common with us. Dorothea believed that every person deserved to be treated with dignity and compassion, respect and care. When Dorothea was a child, her life was really hard. Her mom was often sick and her dad wasn't very kind. Her family moved from place to place a lot. Dorothea didn't always feel safe or seen. Eventually, she went to live with her grandmother in Boston, Massachusetts, and things got better. Dorothea loved to read, and even though girls weren't always taught to study back then, Dorothea taught herself all types of things. And when she grew up, she became a teacher and opened a school for children who were poor, like she was. She wasn't trying to be famous. She was just a compassionate person who wanted to help. One day, Dorothea decided to visit a Unitarian church where Dr. William Ellery Channing was speaking. What she heard that day changed her life forever. Dr. Channing preached that God was love, and that all living beings were part of that love, and that we were called to show that love to others. This was very different from the sermons she had grown up with in her home church, and it wasn't long after that that Dorothea became a Unitarian. Inspired by her UU faith that called her to put love and compassion at the center of her life, Dorothea started looking around for people who were treated unfairly, people who had been forgotten. One day, she visited a prison where women were being locked up, not because they were dangerous or criminals, but because they had mental illnesses. Some of them were chained to a wall with no warm clothes or blankets. The people in charge told her, "Doesn't matter, they don't feel cold like normal people." But Dorothea knew better. She said, "They are people. They feel cold. They feel pain. They deserve dignity." And then she did something amazing. She didn't just feel sad about it. She took action. Dorothea visited every prison in the state of Massachusetts. She took notes, she asked questions, she wrote reports, and then she spoke to people in government. And guess what? Because of her work, the state opened hospitals where people with mental illnesses could be treated kindly, given food, adequate care, clothing, and respect. And she went to other states after that and did it all over. Over and over, she showed up and spoke out. She helped change the way our country thinks about mental health. Because Dorothea Dix believed that people should be treated kindly, even if they think or act differently than us, and that everyone deserves dignity, no matter what they're going through. With her life, she taught many people that compassion often means standing up and saying, "This isn't right. We can do better." Can you say that with me? This isn't right. We can do better. That's what compassion looks like. Noticing someone who's hurting and choosing to care. What I love about this story is how it reminds us that compassion's a practice. We don't just feel sad about someone's pain when we choose to show up with love, but we do something about it and act out of that love. So this week I challenge you. Look for ways to practice compassion. The next time you see someone being left out or struggling or being treated unfairly, even in a tiny way, remember Dorothea and remember that compassion isn't just a feeling. It's something we do. It calls us to treat everyone with dignity, and when we do that, like Dorothea taught us, we change the world. It's our goal. It's our calling. Here ends our time for all ages.
Oops. For the first time in many months, I am wearing a sweater. Autumn has come to New Jersey. I'm also wearing the maroon stole that identifies me as a Beacon chaplain. Chaplains are trained volunteers who bring many different perspectives and life experiences to this ministry, but what we have in common is our deep belief in compassion as an instrument of care. You don't need to be experiencing a major life event to find support and comfort in speaking with a chaplain. We may think the masks we wear are effective emotional camouflage and we're keeping it all together, but then something breaks through the facade. We might see a commercial about sick children or suffering animals, or the day brings one more story of justice denied, or we watch the brutal demolition of a building we hold dear, and we see how fragile those masks can be. Chaplains create a shared space where people don't need to act strong or wise or even optimistic. If you'd like to know more about Beacon's chaplain ministry or you'd like to be connected with a chaplain, you can speak with any member of the ministry team or any of the chaplains, and there's more information on the Beacon website. Chaplains also lead the weekly candle lighting ritual. Together we light candles of joy, sorrow, and gratitude, wishes for healing, prayers for peace. Whatever you carried into community today, I invite you to light a candle and bring it forward here in the sanctuary or wherever you are.
morning. My name is Dana Moore. I use she, her pronouns. I am wearing dark glasses, a black robe, and a red, gold, and black academic hood that I earned by completing my Master of Divinity at Starr King School for the Ministry. Thank you so much for encouraging and cheerleading and supporting me through that journey. This is not a costume, but a well-earned robe. And it is my joy to be your congregational coordinator. Our reading today comes from an interaction by Dr. Mara Karpel. It's called Compassion and Living a Passionate Life. The Sisters of Charity of New York had recently posted a statement on social media about their stance regarding refugees and asylum seekers at the southern border of the United States. "We pray for justice and compassion at our border," was the post that they made in 2018, when the world was in turmoil and feeling as uneasy as it does today. After seeing this post, Dr. Mara Karpel invited them to discuss the important issue of compassion at the border and the larger critical issue of compassion in general. In their discussion, she told them this: "What has been most painful for me lately is a phenomenon that I have become increasingly aware of. That is, more and more people whom I thought to be compassionate people, because they have shown compassion for me as their friend, as well as compassion for their own families and friends, and for many in their network, they have been, of late, demonstrating a closing of their hearts to those outside of their own tribe, to those who might look different or come from different life circumstances. Sadly, when we turn away from those who need our compassion the most, there is increased despair, not only in those people from whom we have turned our backs, but also within ourselves. Compassion is difficult. It's painful, in fact. The Latin meaning of the word compassion is co-suffering. We might suffer along with those we have compassion for. However, picking and choosing whom to feel compassion for while closing our hearts to the rest actually robs us of our full human experience of depth and passion. On a more global level, lack of compassion leads to a very hard and punishing community, rather than one filled with the kindness and peace that we say we want in our world. So it's worth the effort and even the pain that it takes to expand and deepen our compassion for those outside of our family and our network, our tribe. She gives several tips for overcoming the challenge of deepening compassion. It includes practicing self-care, gratitude, random acts of kindness. She mentions one that lives in our teal hymnal, the metta, or loving kindness meditation. And finally, volunteering to help others, specifically those who come from different backgrounds and life circumstances. Because getting to know people who are different than us on a deep personal level humanizes the other to us and makes it easier to open our hearts. Finally, she quotes psychologist Jack Kornfield, who writes, "Thick layers of ignorance and trauma can obscure our passion. When we take this ignorance to be the end of the story, we limit the possibility of human development. In other words, we can't truly live out our passion without having sincere compassion. The wonderful news is that compassion is our nature, and we can tap into this compassion whenever our mind is quiet, whenever we allow the heart to open. Therefore, connecting to our innate compassion is as simple as making time each day to quiet the mind and just breathe. Let us take a moment to do that together. Breathe deeply, friends. Release thoughts. Quiet your mind. Listen carefully to the rhythmic prayer of your individual heart, the prayer that calls us into the practice of compassion. And with your next deep breath, please join me and the Beacon Choir as we sing hymn number 1031, Filled with Loving Kindness.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
I'd like to welcome Katie Zastra, Executive Director of First Friends of New Jersey and New York, to share our testimony today.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. Apologies to the choir who has to hear me again. I'm Katie Sastre. I'm the Executive Director of First Friends of New Jersey and New York. And many of you are familiar with the work that we do. Essentially, try not to leave people behind when they end up in immigration detention. Accompany them to their ICE check-ins if they are not detained, and just stand alongside them while navigating what is an incredibly bureaucratic, confusing, and abusive immigration system. I want to talk about what's happening right now and how we keep going through that. 2025 has been, for many of our communities, one of the worst, a very bad year, but more so for immigrant communities. And in the current climate, we do expect that it will only get worse, unfortunately. The current administration has opened dozens of immigration detention centers in just the last 9 months, and there are plans to open more, including here in New Jersey, with potential opening of Fort Dix coming very soon, which could hold up to 3,000 of our neighbors. And that would triple our state's current detention capacity. We hear from families who are blindsided by essentially kidnappings all the time. And the stories are really, really, really heavy. A dear community member this year who had been detained and then was released was picked up by ICE and very quickly deported. Others who we also care about very much in detention have accepted voluntary deportation because the torture of immigration detention is really just too much to survive. And unfortunately, that's the reality that many of our loved ones are facing, the choice between sitting in a cage or accepting exile and separation from your family, from your community, from the people you love. But at the very same time, because that's super bleak, we do see what happens when community shows up for each other. That man who was deported, his then girlfriend, who loves him very much, said without a second thought, I'm moving with him to a place she had never been. They got married and they started a new life. And recently, a few weeks ago, when another friend who was detained outside of the state accepted voluntary departure, one of our amazing volunteers spent an entire day taking him a suitcase. So, I mean, this was a 12-hour day. Picking up the suitcase here in New Jersey from his loved ones, driving to Pennsylvania, getting denied some of the things in the suitcase, driving back, bringing the remaining items to that loved one, right? And the whole point of that was that when that man had to go or chose to go, that he should have some of his own belongings and some of his own humanity intact. And this is the work that we do. We often cannot change outcomes. We're not lawyers, and our job is really to stand alongside people. The job is really to make sure that we don't let people get disappeared. We answer the phone, we show up at check-ins, we write letters to people in detention, we have volunteers who drive hundreds of miles in one day. We hug strangers who we don't know because their loved ones were kidnapped. And the thing that I'm reminded of the most and what keeps me going is that I know that fear is meant to isolate and paralyze us. But when we have that connection to another human being, that can change everything. It tells that person, I see you. And being seen, I think we all want that. It changes the way you carry yourself, how you move through the world. So the system is getting worse every single day. The attacks on immigrants are escalating. Whole communities are being terrorized. People you know, people you love, people I love. But these same communities and volunteers who show up and support them have really shown me that there is a lot of pain right now, but right alongside that, there's a lot of possibility. And that's the reminder to keep going and keep doing the work. And what keeping going looks like is it can be super concrete, right? Like for us, it's writing a letter to someone in detention. It's showing up for an accompaniment in Newark so that someone doesn't have to walk into this really scary federal building with a bunch of ICE agents inside by themselves. It's giving money so that people can make a phone call from detention and hear their kids' voices, because nothing in detention is free. And honestly, it's really just showing up when it's most inconvenient and staying even when it's uncomfortable. And I want to say that the New Jersey community, and that includes you guys, I was here in February, has really shown up in all of these ways and more. You've helped make sure that people are not alone during some of the hardest moments of their life. And that matters more than anything, because when people know that they haven't been forgotten, when they're not just locked away in a cage where nobody sees them and nobody knows what's happening, there's some hope there, right? It gives them the strength sometimes to keep going. And it matters to our volunteers who are maybe new to this work and trying to figure out how to do this, right? They learn that courage grows with practice. You're just gonna have to keep showing up. It's gonna be really uncomfortable, but it'll get more comfortable over time, and there's a lot of reward. I know you talked about like endorphins and stuff, like the children learned about that this week. There's a lot of reward in choosing to walk alongside people. And I think the reason it matters the most is because we have to be people who refuse to normalize this level of cruelty. So in a time that I think was really designed to make people invisible, we don't plan on letting that happen. And in a time that was meant to fracture our community, I really think that we've made it stronger and that we'll continue to do that. And that will outlast this administration and any other one that comes. So we may not win every case, but I do want to say thank you to all of you for showing up, for standing with folks, and for just reminding us all that life and people will always find a way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, our morning offering will be gratefully received.
I feel like we are on a musical adventure. It feels especially important this year to have an existence in the realm of possibility to keep us going. And part of our adventure is that we were doing one-day choirs. So I'll just say that 2 weeks from today, we're going to do another one-day choir. So I hope that you will join us for lunch and more singing, learning just some new repertoire. With the concert today, Mark Miller is a wonderful composer. He's coming with Julian Womble, who's a baritone, who happens to be a professor of political science at George Washington University. And Julian wrote a book called We Choose You, How Black Voters Decide Which Candidates to Support. So he is also a wonderful singer. And the other part of our musical adventure that I can tell you about right now is that their next piece was written by John O'Neill. It's the Prayer of St. Francis, and we have done it once before, but because we have the composer here with our rehearsal process, we changed the piece. So this is going to be the first time it's really in the world in this iteration.
Who needs a sermon after the music that brings us to life? I have a lot of questions for you today, but very few answers. The first is, are we all familiar with the term super admin? Maybe not in a technical sense, but more personal. You know, the well-skilled assistant who's a whiz with technology, multitasking, and a natural problem solver. The person who knows everything and everyone. the well-trusted go-to person who holds institutional knowledge and all of its intricacies, a super admin. I believe here at Beacon, we call that person Thule. My mother was also a super admin. Before it became a thing, she worked as a legal assistant and stenographer, and I loved going into the office with her. I'd watch her fingers zip across the keyboard and wonder if I'd ever be able to match her speed. After using all of her correction tape on the typewriter, remember those? I gave up and hoped it was a skill that would just activate when I came of age. And that did not happen. But thanks to a class in high school, I figured it out. And I later found myself in secretarial school at Gibbs College in Montclair, where I studied corporate assistance. While working in legal offices, I took advantage of every professional development opportunity while I worked in municipal government and took specialized classes when I worked for universities. And it wasn't long before I, too, was acknowledged as a super admin, managing projects and people, mastering systems and spreadsheets, and wielding pivot tables like my own personal magic wand. Administrative assistance became a passion for me, not because I could execute assignments, but because I could help people, bosses and businesses, individuals and institutions. You see, my joy came from identifying pain points and creating solutions, from recognizing gaps in systems and being able to help. My passion was born out of compassion for the people I worked with. The corporate environment was not right for me, but it did help me to understand the struggles of not just organizations, but the people within them. And my passion for people, my desire to support, uplift, care for my colleagues, the practice of compassion led me down another path. I began to study energy work and ministry. And it was both passion and compassion that led me right here to Unitarian Universalism, where I was welcomed to apply both my professional and pastoral skills. How's that for a super admin? After being invited into my role as the congregational coordinator here at Beacon, I was super excited to share those skills, thrilled to be able to support a community that I already loved with the skills that I'd honed for more than 2 decades. I couldn't wait to schedule trainings and create a congregational calendar, coordinate community events with all of you. And for those first 17 days, I met with team leads, discussed needs, strategic planning, invited members to dream with me as we reimagined Beacon Cafe. And then everything stopped. What you might not know is that everything stopped for me because the driver behind me on Route 22 did not. My life was interrupted in July of this year. I had experienced both a bodily and a brain injury, as well as a loss of function, a loss of identity without access to the skills that I'd known for so long. I found myself in grief, and in that space, I had to learn something that I had not practiced for quite some time: self-compassion. After the motor vehicle accident, it was the compassion shared with me in this community that sparked my awareness that I was not being as compassionate with myself as I might have been with others. I wasn't willing to accept that I couldn't navigate my very detailed spreadsheets. I didn't want to admit that my communication was suffering. But words of comfort were shared with me. Concerns for my health poured in. Offers came from traumatic brain injury specialists in this community to the shared ministry of my colleagues, our Beacon staff, who willingly suffer with me as we navigate my limited capacity. Michi checks in with me about milk every week. A new member, Minaz, bakes regularly, and Miss Maria makes magic of our Beacon Cafe spreads. Yes. And even you have followed up with me to ensure that a need was covered or that I'd just seen an email. Thank you. This compassion from you and others opened my eyes, and I began to see my own suffering through the lens of others that were empathizing with me. Now, I want to be clear about what compassion actually is. We heard about compassion through Dorothy Dix. And I want to remind us that compassion is not sympathy, which is a feeling of concern or pity for someone. And compassion is not empathy, the ability to understand and share feelings of another person by imagining yourself in their situation. And though empathy gets us closer, compassion is empathy plus. Compassion is co-suffering, a willingness to be in it with others, including yourself, and to help find a way out. But what's crucial here is that compassion doesn't just happen to us. It's not something we're born with or without. It is cultivated, a practice. And like any practice, it requires repetition, intention, and even failure, a lot of learning. Just as I had to learn the keyboard or identify pain points and learn how to create those solutions in my administrative work, I had to begin to relearn self-compassion. What's wonderful about this is that where passion exists, compassion tends to emerge because our passions can cultivate compassion within us. You may have a passion that you identify with, and I invite you to think about why you are so deeply engaged, why you are so fired up about your passions. Does it lead back to compassion for the people that you touch and help? And how do we cultivate compassion as a spiritual practice? Passion serves as a pathway to compassion, but passion without compassion can be destructive. Compassion provides us a moral framework and purpose when we are working within our passions. It grounds us, leading to more positive and enduring actions. So, I have learned through my years that there are 3 vital steps to cultivating compassion. Would you like to know what those are? Wonderful. Because I also believe alliteration is a really great way to learn and remember, so all 3 of these words start with A. The first step is awareness. The second is action. And the third is application. So let's break those down. First, awareness. Awareness is mindfulness, the recognition that suffering exists, whether in ourselves, in another person, or in our systems. It's the ability to pause and see what is happening without turning away. We cultivate awareness by paying attention, noticing when someone's voice changes, recognizing when our own bodies are holding tension, and by asking ourselves, what is the suffering here? Where is the pain? We practice awareness every time we choose to see rather than look away, every time we choose to notice rather than ignore. And the more we practice noticing that suffering, the more attuned we become, like developing a muscle. At first, it takes conscious effort, but over time, awareness becomes part of how we move through the world, yes? Second is action. But I like to call this a passive action because I know as Unitarian Universalists, we get excited about taking action. But not all action means jumping right in. Action also means pausing. Action can be learning and understanding, broadening our perspectives and discovering what our desire to help actually looks like. Action in the practice of compassion isn't rushing in to fix things. We cultivate this kind of action by learning to respond rather than react, by asking before assuming, by sitting with discomfort long enough to understand it, by researching and reading, and listening to those who have experienced things that we have not. Finally, application. Here it comes. We get to do things, right? But application in the practice of compassion means that we are taking what we have learned from our awareness and our passive action and applying it first to ourselves, then to others, and then outside of that to larger communities and the world. This is important because without all three movements, we risk hurting ourselves and others. We cultivate application by beginning small and building outward. We start with ourselves, with self-compassion. We practice speaking to ourselves with kindness. We practice acknowledging our own suffering without judgment and offering ourselves the same grace we would offer a dear friend. And then we extend the practice to others, to a small group, to a congregation, each circle wider than the last. We cultivate application not by trying to save the world all at once, but by practicing compassion in each interaction, each conversation, and each moment of choice. What I love about this community and this faith is that we are already doing so much of this work in community. Just look at our children and youth program, the story that Jermaine shared earlier today. Through our religious education programs, we have committed to be a community that raises confident, compassionate, and resilient children and youth. And just this month alone, they have learned deeply about compassion. Not only Dorothea Dix, but about Clara Barton. They learned about the science of compassion, how tiny acts of care can spark dopamine, serotonin, neuropeptides, and endorphin production. They did this through a smile activity. It's amazing. And they've learned how compassion takes the form of moving outside of our comfort zone and responding to the needs of others as they arise before us. They have done this learning that has brought them to be light years ahead of us because they have been practicing this in this community. And it is we who must learn to practice what we preach. When we practice and cultivate compassion daily, every time we walk through these doors, every time we walk out of these doors, we have opportunity to practice. We practice compassion here when we greet the stranger at coffee hour instead of gravitating only to familiar faces. We practice compassion when we notice someone sitting alone and move toward them. When we ask, "How are you?" and actually wait to hear the real answer. When we offer to set up chairs, bring a meal, or send a card, all of these things contribute to our community and this daily cultivation of compassion, not grand gestures, but small, repeated acts of awareness, action, and application help us to become more fluent in the language of co-suffering and healing. Because people are hurting. The world is aching. The people who walk through our doors, who sign up for community groups and volunteer for stewardship in Beacon Cafe, they are often seeking an unknown, unarticulated connection to revive their own passions. I'm reminded by the Reverend Dr. Robin Tanner that when the world is aching as it does, people, friends, and neighbors, strangers are willing to walk through those doors, our sanctuary doors. I'm reminded that we may never know why, but we don't actually know what grief or heaviness they're holding, what life interruption has turned their world upside down, and we don't need to know to be the sanctuary we claim to be. Because, beloveds, we are already bound by our words, our commitments, and lovingly bound by covenant. To truly be a people of justice, equity, and transformation, we must also be a people of awareness, action, and application. That action word, compassion, calls us to be accountable to our spirits and well-being and that of others. The gift of that responsibility is that we get to be a sanctuary. But the responsibility of such a title means that we must be a people actively engaged in our values. With each practice of compassion, our capacity grows. With each practice, our fluency increases. And I wonder, where does your passion for compassion live? What are you called to do with it? And how will you practice awareness, action, and application daily? Compassion calls us to slow down. I know you might be thinking, Dana, I want to get out there and get my hands dirty. I want to be in the thick of it. But we have to do this work safely and respectfully. If we're not willing to first learn and internalize our work, how can we empathize? How do we keep others safe and well if we are not giving the same love and care to ourselves? The gift of a continued practice of compassion is that it presents myriad opportunities for different perspectives of suffering to create limitless solutions, and then bring that work here into this beloved community. Our youth are already doing this work. They are cultivating compassion with every lesson and conversation, every choice to be kind, even when it's hard. And so I invite you, friends, to cultivate compassion as a daily spiritual practice. Then extend that practice to others. noticing suffering, learning what is needed, not fixing or solving or rescuing, leaning into our values. For this is how we are known in the world. May we continue. I am so grateful for the words of the choir and our Director of Music Ministry, Misa, for leading us in our closing hymn, We Shall Be Known.
Thank you, Dana. All right, we are going to sing We Shall Be Known by the company we keep. And I just want to say, as we get ready to sing that, which is on your handout, thank you to our AV team for keeping our sound going, for making it so that we could reach out through the internet and be heard. Thank you, Lux, for monitoring our stream from India. And happy birthday, Sammy. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing We Shall Be Known. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change, alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. Let's try that again from the beginning. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change, alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
Beloved, let us connect in love. For our benediction, let us take hands. Let us remember, the world is aching, people are hurting, and we who covenant together, we who commit to transformation have the capacity, the calling, and the community to respond with compassion. Not someday, not when we're ready, but now. May this continue to be the call of our beloved community. Go in peace and go in love.